and it was built up and stuff flooded, and so people are screwed. But the storm traveled like up and around. I know folks in Savannah and Atlanta who were without power for a while. My folks in Kentucky, they were without power. And of course, my dad, ex emergency management newsman guru, already had the generator running and powering the computers in the fridge because that's how he rolls. They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I have power and air conditioning. Life is
And the
great."
internet.
Yeah, I'm like,
I've got strippers in the house. What are you talking about? We're having a party.
I maintain that it's the I did the hurricane equivalent of taking the umbrella in with you to the store. So I just bought like two huge jugs of water so that the cats would have water.
Right.
I was like, yeah, sure, that'll be good.
You got water, food, alcohol. What else do I need?
I mean, there's a coffee. The coffee is stocked. I have everything else I need, and I think the only thing was we found out yesterday that the propane tank on the grill was empty.
Don't.
You don't have a spare propane tank? Oh, noes.
It's not my responsibility in the household.
We have the propane tank for the grill, but we also have a separate burner that we can attach directly to the propane tank if we want to go ahead and do things like boil water or whatever during an emergency where we don't have anything else and don't want to use the entire grill for that. Because using the grill is kind of gas wasteful when you're doing something so focused because it's heating the entire thing. And so we've got that, and we actually have 2 propane tanks, one in reserve because, when one gets empty, take that one in and get a new one, and you've always got extra propane.
Yeah, I'll have to float that idea to he who manages that resource in the house.
Buying a little grill fitting that you can set a big thing of water on or whatever that attaches directly to the propane. Well, it's not a camp stove. I'll see if I can find the link and I'll put it in
I know what you're talking about.
But it was only like 20 some odd bucks from Amazon, so it was like a no-brainer to buy it.
So, yeah, but I've still got, if that doesn't work in a pinch, I still have a 5 of the 6-pack of fuel for the camp stove. And that's in another closet with another Rubbermaid tote because, how many years of Girl Scouts? Way too many. I can put on my makeup and survive in the outdoors. I am multi-talented, let me tell you. Yep.
Yeah, $28.99 for the little sucker.
Oh, actually, I could see if they sell it at either Big Orange or Big Blue because now I have one child working at each.
It could be. You could have a bidding war going between them. Who's going to get me the best deal?
Probably the one who's department manager.
Ooh. He could lord it over his brother on that. Look at me. Gonna take down.
Well, I mean, there is that, but the other one had better AP test scores, so it's an interesting.
It is in the live.
Good. On that note, howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dead Robot Society. I am Paul Lee Cooley. Joining me, as always, Veronica Jaguar and Terry Mixon, my wonderful co-hosts. How the hell are you, folks?
Good.
Yay, here.
You're really helping me out.
What's this I hear about you having Jim Cantori camping in your backyard with a pop-up tent? What was going on with that?
No. Jim Cantori was on the other side of the state. Everyone was always like, what about the hurricane? What about this? I'm on the East Coast. East Coast of Florida. Close to the Space Center. It may or may not be rumored that they built the Space Center where it is because that certain little corner, for whatever reason, doesn't get hit dead on by storms. I don't know if it's true. All that I know is that storms have not hit that stretch for as hit dead on coming in from the Atlantic for that long. Excuse me, I knock on wood so I don't spoil something. Yeah, let's not do that. But yeah, we got, if you're familiar with hurricanes, draw it into quadrants. The southeast corner of the storm it's a nothing burger for us because that just kind of skated past. We got some wind, we got some rain. It did not affect lawn furniture or tree limbs. So,
wow, you got lucky.
We got very lucky. The ground is soaked, but that's really it. So yeah, it was a day off to pretty much hang out, take care of some invoices, and clean.
So you got some writing or some recording done, or both?
I did. I got some demos recorded this week. I got writing done on. Well, I got writing done on one project. My co-authors got writing done on another project because I have no characters in that particular scene right now. I just get to make horrible, horrible jokes while they're writing.
Or make horrible suggestions.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Yeah. Everyone has a role. That is mine. I am comedic support. So, at least in that case. Yep. And other than that, it's been just kind of toddling along and getting paid. That's always nice. I like getting paid.
Getting paid is nice.
Getting paid is really nice. One of my clients, because I do telephony work sometimes, they needed stuff added on. So I sent them a revised invoice that had the added on prompts. They sent me the check this week. It was for both invoices.
Nice.
Not just the revised one. And I went,
you overpaid.
Yeah, I went, I think this is wrong. I only invoiced you for this much and this is nearly double. You want to fix that? And they went, yeah. Thanks. Let's go check with the person who's actually doing this billing to make sure they're not doing this with other people and we're not double paying. Because that would be bad.
That would be very bad.
So, helping people troubleshoot their administrative processes.
Good God.
That's been my week. What about you, Terry?
We has a new visitor in the house.
Visitor or resident?
Well, resident. She was a visitor until yesterday. One of our neighbors had to move out of their house to an apartment, and they could only take 2 cats with them, and their 2 older cats were the ones that they chose to take. And their daughter had brought in a little bit older than a kitten, a juvenile female that's been there for a couple of months. And so they had to find a home for her. And so she was here and she got tested yesterday and came back clean. So now she's an official resident. Let me go grab her. She's such a love bug that her name is Bug.
Aww.
What is it with cats?
I don't know. Anytime, these poor forlorn creatures come up, you got to be a sucker.
Yeah, you got to be a sucker to take one in. What the hell's wrong with you?
I don't know.
God. Terry has such poor planning. He's such poor planning. I hear thumps somewhere. Oh, there he goes.
He's a baby. Oh, it's a sweetheart. Oh, she's got big eyes. Oh. She's a medium floof. She looked less floofy in the other pictures.
She's got floof. A little bit of floof. But she's just a juvenile. She says, I want to get down and see what's going on.
Aww.
Where are you going to go? What you going to do?
She's got markings a lot like Sassy's.
She's got some. Oh, the hissies. Rumble, grumble. There's other kitties. I don't like it.
So what else have you been up to besides cats?
Oh, I've been writing. But, cats are more important. So here about you.
Writing is important, but cats are importanter.
He says that shit and then he walks away. What the hell? What the hell? After sticking his tongue out at me? Well, I guess I should give my update.
That's right.
You should.
I submitted my book, so it's with the editors at the press, and I'll be awaiting their comments with bated breath. So I was glad to get that one out there. The betas were pretty clean. I had a couple of dummies in there that I had already found and fixed, but my beta readers found them too, so that was always a good check. And there were a couple of suggestions they made, one of which I jettisoned outright. Another one I took to heart and added another paragraph to the book, and that kind of fixes things, I think. So anyway, got that done, and then I made the mistake of opening up Signal Decay. And I read 22,000 words of it and went, wait a minute, this is missing 3 scenes. Where are they?
Oh.
Oopsie.
And then I went looking for them, and they don't exist. I don't know what happened to them.
Uh-oh.
But here's the cool part. I don't need them because I've decided I'm going to change what I'm going to do there anyway. So that's a book that definitely deserves to be finished. But I have to. I wrote a chapter on extinction this week. I don't know how to fold it in yet. I've got to write one more big one. Well, 2 more big ones, I think. And that subplot should be resolved. And then I can go write the epilogue. And then I have to decide what else I'm going to add to the book. But we're getting closer. I still want to have this book done I wanted to have it done by the end of September. That ain't happening. But I blame hospitals for that. So I'm going to work on getting it done before the 15th, so I have it ready for folks to beta in November, I hope. That's the plan, anyway. Patrons will just be all over it. But it's going to be a long time before I record it. Guarantee you that.
That's okay.
So got that done. I looked at my schedule, and it's hell. I have 4 audiobooks to narrate, or three full audiobooks to narrate, or 3.5. Yeah, 3.5. I gotta get an Ancient Trap done, finished. I gotta get Evolution finished, Oceania finished, and then I have to do Extinction. Yeah, so I still have a lot of work to do on that side, and then of course there's gonna be more books, and if this book I sent to the press, if it does well, they're going to want a sequel, and I'll have to kick that puppy out pretty quick. So my schedule is going to have to be a little bit flexible. But you got to do what you got to do for the cash. And if the cash comes in, then I got to basically go after this and for a while and make it work so I can afford to publish the other black books, which would be nice. So anyway, things are moving in the right direction. Last night I was at Dark Night, and about 2 a.m. we were going to break up and go home. And one of the guys opened the door, and this black streak ran by, and then it started meowing at us from the shadows. And I made the mistake of sitting down, and the cat came to me, juvenile, probably 4 to 6 months old, very, very skinny and hungry. So we fed him, and he ended up sleeping on me because I ended up staying the night. So I now have a new cat sitting in my guest bedroom in quarantine. And his name is Rogue. And he's very, very snuggly, and I like him. And he likes me. It's always nice.
A snuggle bug.
Yeah, so something about DRS and cats, I don't know what the hell it is, but, yeah, welcome to the Cat Cast. But we're not here to talk about cats.
Are you sure?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean we're not here to talk about cats?
This is not the cat podcast, goddammit. It just is not.
Damn it. I'm off this show. We're done.
How did you open the door? How did you do that?
I have secret thumbs.
Apparently. Anyway, we had a topic suggestion, a couple of them in the DRS Discord. If you're
We
not
take
familiar.
suggestions?
Yes, there's a topic. There's the topics. So there was an interesting question, which is how titles work. Advice on titles. And are there certain rules for titles in certain genres? So I thought it was an interesting question. And I didn't have an easy answer for it. Is what is the funny part. And I was talking about this with somebody, and we're like, you don't want to name your sci-fi book Lady Chatterley's Lover.
You don't? Damn it! Must change title. Making a note right now.
Do you see why?
Well, one.
Say it's not an existing title. Let's just take that as a title. Okay, as a title. I'm just using it as an example.
Yes.
I don't think that maps well to science fiction from a marketing perspective because it doesn't have anything related to it. It wouldn't be a book that the average sci-fi reader will automatically pick up because of the word lover in it.
Well, hang on now. I don't know that this is a title, by the way, but there have been titles much similar to the lines of My Alien Warlord Conquering Lover or whatever.
Yes.
That is a genre in sci-fi. That is a genre.
It is. And it's very prolific and it is marketable. And some of us have a niche for narrating it. So.
Tim says more like Lady Chatterley's Starship.
But there you go. That right there would signal that it's definitely science fiction and there could or could not be a more romance or erotica aspect to it because you're cueing in on certain things.
So basically, I guess this brings up the fact that there are unwritten, unspoken rules about titles. And title, I know some people who have a real problem with titles. I have no problem with titles. The titles usually appear before I even begin the book because I have a central theme somewhere or a central idea or something along those lines. So the title just kind of comes out. And there's only been one case where I had a problem with a title, and that was An Ancient Trap. Ended up going with that because of the blurb, because I couldn't figure out what else to name that goddamn book. It was the only one I've ever stumbled with. And even An Ancient Trap is very generic. That could be in almost any genre, except for maybe romance, but I guess even romance you could call it that. But it does, the fact that it has ancient in there has some connotations about mystery, obviously old stuff, and trappings. Well, this should be interesting. What is the trap? That's kind of the point. So you just basically cover the general feel of the book or the general conceit with a couple of words. It doesn't have to reflect the book at all, but it needs to give, in my humble opinion, it needs to have some kind of feel of the atmosphere of the book, if you know what I mean. Like I was thinking about Terry's Empire of Bones. Empire of Bones is another pretty generic one, and that's not a slight. That's actually a compliment, because it's a title that would work across genres. Just seeing that, it could be fantasy, it could be sci-fi, it could be thriller, it could be all these different things. It could have stuff to do with archaeology. Who the hell knows? The point is, it's a catchy title because of that very reason. Because it is generic enough and at the same time pointed enough about what's going on in the book that it might get you to read the blurb. And the moment you read the blurb, you realize, okay, this is sci-fi. This is a book I want to pick up.
Mm-hmm. It's the title paired with the cover that tells what it is.
That's the other part I was going to get to. The title on the cover has a lot to do with how the book is perceived. The cover has a lot of ideas about it. But when you're pitching a book, for instance, you don't have a cover. All you have is a title, your synopsis, and your finished novel, and that's all you got. So some publishers will come and say the title is not going to work, or hey, this title is 42 words long. We're not fitting that on the back of a dust jacket. Try again. You know, there are certain things that you kind of have to take into consideration, and one of those is long chapter titles. I mean, not long chapters, long book titles. Because think of how you're going to fit that on a paperback.
Itty bitty type.
Itty bitty type. So you kind of have to think about what, you know, some of the low-hanging fruit of rules that there are. But like I said, I think these rules are unwritten. You just kind of have to look at what's out there, and especially in genres, and try and get an idea for the books.
Well, there are also trends in titles.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the whole, going back to apologies, Disney movies for, the past, I think, almost 15 years. a lot of these movies they're like single word titles. And they may or may not, summon up the you might not get the sense of it, but it's easy to refer to. So you had Frozen, you had Up, you had Moana, you had Tangled, you had Coco,
Smile,
and same thing. Well, yeah, with horror movies, Smile. So it works, but again, it works along with the visual of the cover.
I mean, Smile could be anything until you look at the cover and then you go, okay, that's not Happy Movie.
No.
Jean-Philippe says Heinlein must have gotten away with his titles due to name recognition. Friday, Methuselah's Children, and etc.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. There's certain trends for, grabbing biblical names or biblical places and playing on the name recognition there, and then the juxtaposition with the genre.
Tim says, I think short story titles have less writing on them than those for novels as well. I don't know about that. That's an odd one. I haven't done any magazine stuff in a long time, so I don't know.
Yeah. I think especially if like you're submitting to an anthology, you have to have the flavor of that anthology may inform what you title a short story. And vice versa, there's there's a story being rejected because the title doesn't fit or it doesn't quite hit the nail on the head.
It's like essays when we're doing essays for competition or for like getting into college. Having a good title for your essay is what makes it stand out from others because people don't think about that kind of thing. And I think it matters with short stories too. I think it has to have that feel to it. It has to kind of go along with the blurb. And if you're in a short story market, like for Podcastle, whomever, I think it's kind of important to think about those details. You don't have to have that title up front immediately, but that's something you need to think about once you finish the book is exactly what you're going to call it. And I would just say that the easiest way to get inspiration for that is go look at the market.
Yeah.
To get ideas.
Right now, if you go and look in the subgenre of sports romance and the subgenre of hockey romance, there is a play on the word pucked.
Obviously, yeah.
He's pucking crazy or get pucked or what have you. It's constantly used in titles. And,
puck off.
Yes. And I was going to say, so Millie says, particularly now that many people can't write just one book, they have to write a series. So the title has to be recognizable to your series. One of my favorite romance authors, Serena McMaster, she writes hockey romance. She writes some other stuff. She's also just absolutely delightful. One of her hockey series, it's the first 6 books of her first series are all 2 for whatever. 2 for roughing, 2 for fighting, 2 for interference. So, 1, it's part of the series.
Right.
And 2, that it's, tongue-in-cheek hockey romance. And it's really spicy and it's really good. So, it's so good. It's so good. Oh, I love her stuff. But it's that sort of thing. One of the authors who I just finished, she does football romance. And so it was rule breaker, front runner, hard hitter. So they're all like, there's a sports aspect to them. It's 2 words, and it gets paired with a it's paired with airbrush dabs and usually an arm holding a football. So
you shouldn't be surprised by anything, Millie.
No, it is
and high.
Huge. And it pays well. And I enjoy the crap out of it, both as a reader and a performer. So, but it's knowing how to title things. I don't know. There was a comment earlier. It's like, do you ever get the title first and then write the story?
All the time.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll like, oh, that'd be a cool title, or that'd be a cool premise, or it would be, I'll get character names, and then like I have to write a story about that particular character. So
I had the title for Empire of Bones before I wrote a single word.
Yeah. And I had the title for The Black before I even started a single word, because I came up, as soon as we brainstormed that puppy, I put that title on there, and that was that. And it just works. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even as stupid as it is, it's just 2 words. It doesn't really define anything. But when you put it in context with a cover, it can scare the shit out of you, which is the point. Names is an interesting thing to also talk about, which was another topic. So I'm glad you provided us a segue there. I may have told this story before, but I was at my nephew's high school graduation, and I was working on Station 3 at the time, and the book was not going well. And they were getting to the end of the folks, and this gentleman came up there who, I don't know what his nationality was. I assume, made some assumptions about Mideast, but I have no idea. But here's what happened. They announced his name. And I can't remember the last name, but the first name was Zilfakir. And I thought, that is the most badass fucking name ever. I have got to write, that's Station 3. And once I found that name, the character just exploded. Mm-hmm. Just because of the name. I made him Persian from New Persia, which is its own little planet. And then I started incorporating Persian mythology into his backstory, as well as all this other stuff. And suddenly the book just worked for me. Yeah. The name is very important. And the one other good thing is Zilfakir is too many syllables. Everybody calls him Zilf. Mm-hmm. Problem solved. But it just provided me such a kick in the ass to get that book done when I finally found the name that he needed.
I love names. Just like it's since I started doing like message board, RPGs and storytelling, coming up with a good name for a character. And I will be that person that goes and finds the meaning of a name. Because once upon a time when I did those message board RPGs, you had to have a name that fit the character. You couldn't just name them for whatever reason. There had to be a meaning behind it. So if you ever need to do that, behindthename.com is fantastic. There are a lot of other places, but it's very comprehensive. You can do searches. There's a random name generator, and there's also a behind the surname for that. Mm-hmm. So you can search some last names. Super helpful. But there are plenty of times where I have a character name, and it's like, yep, there has to be a story. And once they have like a full name, then that character starts to come to life.
There's something about the personality that kind of derives from the name, and I don't know what it is, but the name I think has a connotation for us subconsciously. And each writer is going to be different, obviously, and each character is going to be different. But there is something about having that completion. Mm-hmm. And if I don't know how to name somebody, I leave a blank for it, but I've never had a point where I didn't know the name of a main character, because they just kind of jump at me. And of course I cheat because I've been using patrons' names and people in the graveyard for forever, but in certain books. But for some of the other stuff, it's just a different animal. But there are some unwritten rules to character names.
There are.
What are they?
Well, one is don't make one up unless you go and research what it actually means. Don't take a random word from a language you're not familiar with and then say, oh, this is a great name. Because, no, don't do that shit. It's just, at worst, you look ignorant. At best, you look ignorant. At worst, you're offending somebody and you're looking kind of stupid. So, it's there are better ways to put names together. Say the name aloud. From your
Yes.
friendly, neighborhood narrator. If you're doing an alternate spelling, say the name aloud. Record yourself saying the name aloud. Because, you know, Madison with a Y and it's not where you think it is. Doctor Strange, I think. Was that Doctor Strange? I think so.
Madison.
But say the name aloud, alternate spellings, apostrophes, say it aloud, write it phonetically. Because those of us who do look at those sorts of things for a living are going to give it a pronunciation based on the rules we know. And if it doesn't match what you think it should be, we have to default to you. So
I want to hear you narrate Lovecraft. I want to hear you narrate the names of those elder gods.
Okay. Someone has probably already done it.
I'm sure.
So I would go look it up.
You would cheat. You would cheat.
No, I would stick to convention. That's what I would do.
That's cheating.
Granted, I had someone write a character and their base character, they said, yeah, it uses a click language. And I was like,
oh, God.
I managed to get like 3 words out properly. It took like 10 minutes of practicing before I had to say it, but it's possible. Or, Caucasian, barely Duolingo stuff.
You know how I got around that? I described the clicks and then moved the fuck on.
That's also something to do. But yeah, so research your names. Say them aloud. Double check to make sure that if you're doing like a first and last name or a first and middle name, that it's not hitting something problematic in history or current events that you don't want to allude to.
Right. Unless there's a reason for it.
Right. I mean, we all love a good symbolism, but don't do the unintended.
I did an intended one in the book before this one that I'm currently writing. I decided that a character, basically a throwaway character in there that they had to interact with, was a descendant of the Medici family. I can't even say it.
De Medici.
And
so I did that intentionally, just so I could have an interesting point about that.
And those are smart Easter eggs to do.
The interesting thing is, looking back at it, I was like saying, well, how am I going to do this with this character? I did a little bit of research, and the direct line for De Medici is dead. It doesn't have anybody in it. But there are cadet lines that still exist. So I couldn't make a direct descendant, but I could make the cousinish sort of thing.
Yeah. You can always do... Name research is fun.
And
oh, God.
She was not a Machiavellian schemer. She was a realtor.
Close enough. Close enough. I know those people.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I think if unless you're writing satire or high epic fantasy, poor fuckers, I don't think your name needs to be 42 goddamn syllables. And I don't think you need to include necessarily, middle names and things like that. But yes, think of your narrator, for crying out loud. If you're thinking about audio, think about how that's going to sound coming out of somebody's mouth. Like she said, say it aloud. Mm-hmm. And if you can't say it aloud pretty fast, none of your characters are going to be able to say it very, very fast. If they have a formal name, come up with a nickname.
Mm-hmm. And if you're writing romance, make sure that your main characters' names aren't ridiculous and can be screamed appropriately. Otherwise, it's going to sound dumb.
Here's what you should do, Paul. You should have someone that is prim and proper and, just a very good, by straight and narrow person in life, and name them Borgia.
Oh, God. I would name them after a serial killer. I named one of my AIs after a serial killer. I'm waiting to see if somebody actually picks that up at some point.
I was having a conversation with my wife's oldest when we were having lunch a couple of weeks ago, and she was making some kind of comment about she had learned that, apparently there were shenanigans going on in the Catholic Church in history a little bit. I said, "Oh, you have no idea. Allow me to tell you about the Borgia Pope."
Borgia.
And then we went down that rabbit hole, and she's like, "Really? Oh my God!" Like, what do they teach these days? How do you not know about the Borgias?
Dude, they don't get me started. Millie says, even with high fantasy, there's a trope of God's damn it, that's too long. I'm going to call you nickname. Right, and it's like when we had Ouija on this show, and in the pre-show, he told Terry and I his full name. There was no fucking way I was ever going to be able to pronounce that or remember it. It was just way too many syllables. So he cut it down to Ouija. Done deal.
Was that Yuda?
Yuda, sorry. I was thinking of Ouija.
I was like, are we summoning the dead here? Is this a Ouija thing? I'm not sure.
That's Ouija. Ouija was a Japanese man I worked with at Schlumberger who also had a name that was feet long. Mm-hmm. So I got.
It's amazing that you screwed up and couldn't even remember the short version.
Mm-hmm. I know, isn't that frightening? So anyway, characters, people do that all the time. They change their name, or they may have a title and they don't want it used.
Mm-hmm. Or some people, the status between people will dictate what they are called and what they are not.
Right.
Just like it is in real life.
And that can get confusing for readers, but it can be done correctly to make it work right. Mm-hmm. You just have to basically put that line of demarcation as to who is able to talk as a peer and who is a lowly serf.
Mm-hmm. Or who's very familiar and who's not. And sometimes people will use variations of a name to try to intimidate others. So it's the whole, trying to call someone by your full name and how very dare you.
Like my mama. Paul Eller.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. As a parent who has used the first and middle name in frustration many times, it rolls off the tongue pretty fast. Another note, and this is not just for narration, but also for reading. Don't name all of your characters with the same, like starting with the same one or two letters.
Yeah.
Don't have a Mary and a Maud and a Marie and a Michelle and a Michael. Just no. You are going to confuse the heck out of your readers, and they will not be able to track things.
Or don't inadvertently have two characters with the same first name.
Oh yeah, that'd be a problem too.
Yeah, I've been lectured by certain people about having that one name repeat.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Some of us, like, we do have our favorite names that we use and go back to. But be aware of that. And I mean, if you always have a minor character somewhere named, whatever name, that's cool. But, be mindful. And if you give someone a unique name, have a reason for it. So maybe, like, for example, the bowling story that I keep working on. My main character's name is Dante. Why? His mom was an English lit teacher, and Dante's Inferno.
Right.
It's a dumb reason, but it's romance. I can get away with it. And so I do.
I made the mistake of when I wrote The Black, that wasn't the mistake. I had a character named Shauna. In the third book, I have a main character named Sarah.
Sarah.
And I never intended for them to both be in the same book, and they're in two books together, Evolution and Extinction. So it's just glare at me. I hate it, but it is what's done is done, and there's no real way around it. So I just basically make it very clear which one we're talking about. So. I think there's a lot of unwritten rules or names you got to kind of look at, and one of them is basically you need to look at whether it makes sense for the story, whether it makes sense for the character, either it's against their type or for their type, and also kind of think about genres. It would be really interesting to have a character who's in 1800s westerns named Guinevere, depending on what her actual character is. That would be interesting to me. I would not be interested necessarily in reading a historical fantasy with a guy named Joe, who goes by Joe. I would expect something different. I would expect it to be Joseph. So there's little things like that are genre dependent that you kind of have to look into to see if they make sense for what you've written. But really, there's all these unwritten rules and there's all these landmines, but really it's not this complicated. It doesn't have to be that complicated. No. Go with a name that makes sense to you. And like Veronica said, say it aloud and make sure it can be said aloud. Or at least you know how it would be said aloud. Mm-hmm. And if it starts fucking up the flow of the narrative and dialogue, you got a problem. And you probably need to fix it while you can. That's my advice. The character names are usually not a problem for me. I saw Tim said basically he grabs them. They just come off the line, he grabs them, and he goes on his merry way. And that's usually how it is with me. They just kind of jump out of nowhere, and I just go with them. Unless I'm clearing out the graveyard. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to clear out the graveyard with Extinction. I'm very afraid because I wanted to do it. I may have to add a few more scenes to clear out the graveyard.
Have a mass casualty event.
A mass casualty event. Yeah, but then you got to name them off, and that's lazy. Mm-hmm. Antoine says, I hate having to make names for fantasy characters.
Have a system. There are a lot of fantasy name generators out there. And if you have a system for how you name characters, then that can make it easier.
Yeah, if you're that desperate for it, I would try and go easier. I say that, but when I was writing Garaga, I was basically tearing out names from Mesopotamian mythology and stuff like that, and then finding a way to work those names in such a way that I could make use of them. And rather than going with something really, really, really long, I just named Amma and got done with it. Amma means mom. So I just got done with it and moved the fuck on because I wasn't going to try and find this name. I liked Amma. It was easy to say. It's easy to read. It's easy to know who that is. And it just made more sense. And it was still contextually accurate for the time period I was writing in. Mm-hmm. But you could have gone crazy. I could have gone crazy with names in that. And I tried to keep them as simple as possible because, goddamn it, I knew I was narrating it. And I have a mush mouth as it is and enough problems pronunciating my own name, let alone something that's 42 syllables long.
There is that.
Would you name someone with a volcanic personality Mr. Fitzroy? Very few people would get that inside joke, but yeah, why not? Fitzroy has nothing to do with anything. But I know what you're talking about. I know because I know my Sigler, at least some of it. Surnames, nicknames give a lot of meaning to the character. Mm-hmm. If they don't have a nickname and nobody calls them by the nickname and they always call them by their first full name, like their name is Jordan and it's always Jordan, there's no other nickname or anything like that, you get basically two things. One, this person prefers their name to be said that way. And number two, everybody realized it. So that conversation may have been had already. Mm-hmm. And I think that also goes to show there's a difference between somebody who goes by Bob and somebody who goes by Robert. Mm-hmm. Even though they're both full name Robert, one goes by Bob. That's a different personality. It just is in my mind.
You can look at that in everyday life and just how people's relationships will illustrate how they are referred to. My daughter goes by one name here at the house. She has a nickname that her friends use and some of her teachers use. We'll avoid the whole Florida nickname nonsense because maybe they're forgetting to say the other 4 syllables. I don't care. It makes her happy. Anyway, there are my immediate family has another nickname for me that I grew up with. I hate it. So no one else calls me that. There are, I think, 2 people in the world who ever got away with calling me Ronnie. 1, because I hate it. And 2, do I look like one? No. Do I act like one? No. But it was a theater thing, and so we got away with it.
Yeah.
So it's having those nicknames, and it can also, if you have that, oh, your name's really long. Can I just call you this? Fuck no. All right, that says something about the character. Or it's like, well, can I call you this or this? You may call me Your Highness.
Sometimes those longer names can have a different literary purpose or a more formalized name. And what I'm saying there is it's because a certain person can use it in a way that garners a response from the reader. The name that pops to mind is Harcourt Fenton Mudd. Harcourt Fenton Mudd.
You don't know your TNG. No, that's not TNG. It's OSG.
That's OSG.
OST. Sorry.
That's OST. And more recent ones too.
Oh God, man, that's just bad news.
I know. Oh.
Why, was he in Picard?
No. I think it's one of the more recent ones, but yeah,
I don't know whether
it was either Strange New Worlds.
Oh, I bet it was Lower Decks.
Discovery.
I bet it was Lower Decks, wasn't it?
No,
he seems like he would be a perfect fit for Lower Decks.
No, it was either Lower Decks has a ton of callbacks. I mean that's great, but I really think it was one of the live action ones. So it was either Discovery or Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds is in the right time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So that could absolutely be the case. I haven't actually started watching the newest season. Just haven't gotten around to it. But I love that show, so I'm definitely going to get around to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. There's certain, I was thinking of the book Good Omens and how when they start to refer to the kid, it's like this paragraph title. I'm listening to it, so I don't know how long it actually is written. But, Lord of the Deep, Antichrist, yada, yada, yada. But where he's just really called this. So. But it's...
Or Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
Darcy is known as one thing in his own house, in his own manner, with his own family, and then there's how he's perceived outside of that. Yeah.
So the name, knowing the proper address for names is also, it's not just it's relationships between 2 people. It says something about the society that the story is set in. Mm-hmm. And the level of formality, the power differential between people. Yeah, names are cool.
You can spend a lot of time on names. You can spend a lot of time on names.
You can waste time on names.
Yeah, just like with titles, just like with settings, just like with World Builder's Disease, there's a law of diminishing returns. At some point, you just got to grab it and go, I need to fuck them right. And here's the name of the character. Here's the name of the book. Name of the book can change. Name of the character can change. There's things called find and replace. It's not really that big of a deal. So basically, if you need to have a title for submitting, if you need to have a title for synopses, if you need to have a title for anything like that you're doing, trying to sell the book, that's a different matter than I'm writing the book. You don't need a title to write the book. I do, because that's the way my brain works, but the titles are easy. 99% of the time. And they're kind of genre dependent too. So I think about that. I don't think about it consciously though. I think about it unconsciously or subconsciously. And I think that's just how it works for me. But you don't need the title to write the book. And you can change the title. You can change the name of the characters if the character's name doesn't work out. Doesn't change any of the other writing. Except if you're making inside jokes about the name, then you're going to have to go do some serious editing. But those things should not trip you up in your writing, in my humble opinion. They are annoying when you can't figure them out, but they shouldn't trip you up. And of course, everybody's always got advice for names. Terry will be more than happy to help you name your character.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You know where I get a lot of my names from? I go and look at you can get it off of various sites, but you can get the scroll that comes at the end of movies with the tons of people that are named there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they go by, I'm like, oh, that would be a great name. Oh, that's a great name right there. I love that name.
Yep.
When
And
I
it's
go to
diverse.
graduations,
It's
when I go to
definitely-
graduations, I listen for them.
It's diverse when you're looking at the making of the movies because they've got all kinds of people in there. So you don't run into the problem with going to a lot of random name generators where you're generating names that only fit one culture. So that's my advice to you, is to go to IMDb and look at the cast of a movie you liked and then just copy every single name and put it in a Word file. And then you can go through it and say, okay, boom,
Especially
Now,
since these movies
fair
are
to fair
a lot
being fair, you don't
international.
want to name your character after somebody that's going to be recognizable. So steal one first name and one last name from two different people.
That is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Unless it's a language you don't know, in which case be careful.
That
Look
would
it up.
well, sometimes mixing and matching could be pretty fun. You could have an Indian last name and the first name is Greg. How the hell did that happen? Well,
I've got
It's
characters
it's my
like
husband's
that.
London
last
is how it
name,
happened.
so
I
that's
got
the way it
characters
is.
like that in Derelict Saga, where the first name does not fit with the last name at all.
And there's a
right?
story behind it. So that's
Yeah.
that's another act to make it interesting, is to have, like for example, when I worked at NASA, there was a woman there that worked in one of the departments. She had a Greek last name. Her last name was Apostolopoulos. Apostolopoulos. There we go. A very long Greek name. Her first name was Ivy. Even though, may fit there, but the disconnect between the massive last name and the little bitty first name was always amusing to me.
I always thought that was the
nothing
dumbest name
explains
ever.
Duncan, Idaho. Nothing.
Except for Frank Herbert was really hungry for potatoes. Yeah, we have another fantasy name generator site. There's another reference for that, so I guess it's a good one to use.
I used to use a name generator, but the one that I preferred went away, stopped doing business. And the ones that come after it, I'm just not that big of a fan of them. I'd much rather go ahead and mix and match by looking at the big name scroll and pick it out. I've got like 4 or 5 movies that I have Word documents for, and when I need a name, I just open one of the files randomly, scroll halfway down, and go, there.
Another thing I've used is baby names. There's like lists of baby names for culture, male, female, and they come up with descriptions and history of the name as well as all this stuff. Very useful, especially if you're trying to research another culture you're not familiar with.
Yeah. What I like to do is, like I said, I'll go to behindthename.com, and it has lists of like the 100 most popular names in a country in a certain year. And that's helpful because if I'm writing something that is set in 1990 and I'm dealing with somebody who's in their 20s or 30s, I can go through and see which were, the most popular names in Canada in the 1970s. And then I'm going to find something that fits about there. And I can look to see if for something that's a little unique that I haven't heard that often. But clearly it was still used, so I have a reason. But I also like to look through lists and find like certain meanings for names. And then, I like that one means this or that one means that. And then pick a name based on the meaning.
Yeah.
And then some names are just really cool.
There's unwritten rules to all this stuff, and it's use some common sense. Don't go. I guess one of the reasons I can't stand epic fantasy is that everything has this dripping of too much world shit on names, on armor, on horses, on fucking bannermen, and all this stuff. Because you have 14,000 names to remember for what is actually applicable, and I just don't give a shit as a reader. It just befuddles me. So I move the fuck on. I guess that's one of the reasons why I don't like it. But that's just me. That's my personal preference. But I would, especially for fantasy and science fiction, be kind of careful because I've seen alien names that were just, why did you do that? You know, you've got a 7-syllable name that somebody has to use every single time. That's maddening. Don't do
Plus,
it.
you might not spell it the same way every time.
Oh, that's another. Yeah. Finding a replace isn't going to help you if you misspelled it all over the place.
Yep.
So, I mean, those are basically the rules I consider for names, titles, and genres, and how to solve them and slay them. But there's no direct answer. It's just a matter of you got to look at what fits. And if you're having trouble coming up with a title, sometimes coming up with your blurb will fix that. Mm-hmm. Your synopsis of the story, because you will find a phrase that you used that you can actually use, like an ancient trap.
Yeah. Another thing is if you write and you like music and you have soundtracks for your stuff, I am one of those people, titles are not copyrighted. So you may find a song or a lyric that works like, oh, that actually kind of sums up the sense of the book. That could work. Because I know I've used that with certain works in progress, and that's the title of it. And I know with Secret World, we constantly use, because every chapter had a title, and it was usually a song title that matched it. So
I've seen people do that with chapters, where every chapter is the name of a song.
Yep. And then you have a really cool soundtrack for the entire series.
Yeah, I've thought about and have been asked actually to put together playlists of what I'm listening to or what I think you should listen to while you're listening to Derelict Saga or any of that stuff. And it's like, man, you're going to discover so much weird shit if you do that, because I've been writing some really wild stuff lately.
Some people like weird shit.
I know that because I posted on Mastodon, where I find these YouTube videos of these bands that do this ambient drone stuff. People jump on it. There's a lot of people who are interested in this, and it's all cinematic stuff. It sounds like you're watching a movie that has not been made. It's just that neat, and it's very, very unsettling, the stuff I've been listening to, atmospheric and unsettling. So it's perfect. It was perfect for what I was writing. Anyway, what else? What else we got? We pretty much slayed this. We stayed on topic again. That's two shows in a row.
There's got to be a rule against this.
I know. We'll have to go crazy next time.
Well, you had to get through 13 minutes of cat bullshit to get here, but here we are.
I mean.
I mean.
And even then, you were explaining cat names and the reasons the cats have these names, so it was kind of a perfect segue.
Yeah, it was kind of. Oh, this is interesting. I know at least one author whose characters are fans of different bands, and they will turn on songs in the story according to what they're doing.
And that works. Just remember, you cannot have lyrics in your books
without permission.
Because copyright.
Not even a sentence.
No, not even a sentence. And heavens, don't ask your narrator to sing. We can't. Not that we can't sing. We're not allowed to sing. So.
Some more than others.
I mean.
Some because it's not legal, others because it is a crime against humanity.
Exactly.
Against all auditory. Do songs go into public domain? Yes, they do.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
yes,
songs can go into public domain. So lyrics can go into public domain, melodies can go into public domain. So you can have, and I have had to do this, I have had a public domain song as part of a short story that I recorded. And so I had to learn, it was in German too. Why me? So I had to learn it and then sing bits and pieces of it in there. But that was okay because it was public domain. But as a rule, avoid it.
Why is it illegal for narrators to sing?
Because the songs are, because generally the songs are copyrighted, and people do not necessarily get permission to use the songs in the books and in the performance.
Right.
So now in the instance that you had an author that was writing their own music and including that as part of the audiobook, and you got permission to do that, then yeah, sure, not a problem. Make sure you have a narrator who can sing. But otherwise, don't do it.
Now, the fun one would be if you're an author and also a songwriter and you write your own songs to be sung in there.
It's happened.
Yep.
I'm sure it has happened.
Yep.
I believe it happened with J.C. Hutchins. All right, we need to get going. We need to get going because we just have a few minutes before the next show. So thank you for hanging out with us. And if you have a question or comment about this show, you can send an email to show@debrobotssociety.com. You can find me on Mastodon at Paul_E_Cooley at vyrse.social. You can find us on Facebook at the Dev Robot Society Writing Community. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS Podcast, where we are live every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST. Like and subscribe so you know when we're live. And if you want to support the show, you can find us at buymeacoffee.com/DRS Podcast and patreon.com/DRS Podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive live shows like DRS After Dark, which is coming up in about 9 minutes. I wonder what titles we'll talk about.
Naughty titles.
Edward Penis Hands. Got it. Okay, so, and at the $10 level, you get your name read. And our $10 patrons are Juan Valentin, James Tyrell, Nate Cosby, Antoine Batts, Tony L. Joy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Isabel Cushy, and Tim Niederreiter. Thank you to all of our patrons for making this show possible. So, thanks for hanging out with us. Hopefully you learned something. And I'm sorry we're staying on track and everything and not going into madness. I know that's usually what you're here for, but, you know, we also try and be educational at some point.
We can devolve into mayhem next week.
That's true. I chose this week's topic. So we'll see what happens next week when it's yours.
I'm usually choosing the topics. What the crap?
That's because you're the new meat. That's why that is.
Well, that's rude.
Okay, that was the wrong way to say that. Because you're the rookie.
You know, which cut of meat is she? Let's go ahead and discuss that, shall we? In the after show.
Wow.